Welcome back to Jersey Matters. We're talking about healthy babies. And if you have children or grandchildren, you know that they are so precious in our lives, and we would do anything to make sure that our babies are healthy. And that brings us to Dr. Barbara Ostfeld, Program Director of the SIDS Center of New Jersey and professor at Rutgers Robert Wood Johnson Medical School. And speaking of Rutgers, I know this is so exciting that you're using technology and Microsoft and the know-how at Rutgers to really come up with something that's going to help a lot of people.
Well, we're very enthusiastic about it, and thank you for having me and giving me an opportunity to share this. So we're talking about sudden infant death syndrome.
Yes.
And by definition, it means a death in the first 12 months of life that cannot be explained, which is horrifying. But even though we don't know the causes, we have learned the conditions that elevate risk. And that's a powerful thing, because that means we can do something about most of them. And they're summarized by the American Academy of Pediatrics based on research, and they're called the Safe Infant Sleep Guidelines, and they work. But all of that information isn't going to do a bit of good if it sits there in between the pages of a book.
Right.
So the question is, how do you educate? And part of our mission at the SIDS Center of New Jersey is to accomplish that education, and we've done it in a million ways, through training doctors and nurses and social workers and faith-based communities and on and on. But we decided that we wanted to add something new, because I'm a grandmother, and at my stage of life, if I think I want to know something, I go look for a book. But this generation of parents says app. And rich or poor, we've learned almost everyone has a phone. And so we decided that we would go with an app, and last year we launched our first app called SIDS Info through the SIDS Center of New Jersey. And it is a charming informational app that parents can access directly. They don't have to have a middleman educating them, and they can share it. And it's full of information, and it's got text and graphics and voiceovers and English and Spanish and all sorts of things. But as charming as it is, at some point, you can't keep coming back, because a certain degree of, I know this, sets in.
Right.
And yet the risk remains for the first 12 months of life. And just when you want to make sure that those safe sleep guidelines are used, compliance drops off. So how do you keep that information fresh? We raised this with our colleagues at the Aaron Matthew Research Board, which is a national board, and it included volunteers from something called Artificial Intelligence for Good, part of the Microsoft Corporation. And we partnered with them, Rutgers University and volunteers at Microsoft, and created a new app. And the old one still exists. It's wonderful. We received a Department of Health, New Jersey Department of Health Innovation Award for it, which we were thrilled about. It's highly regarded, well received. But the new app, Baby Be Well, which was introduced this week on Android phones and shortly will be out on all phones, has something special. It has a reason to return to the app over and over again. And every time you come back, you get tips about safe sleep. You get to review the information. You can play interactive games to test your knowledge or your babysitter's knowledge. So what is it that's accomplishing that? We've created a baby book. So you can load up photographs and milestones and create schedules and share it with family and friends.
So even if grandma, let's say you're well educated, but let's say grandma or auntie is going to take the baby who's 9 months old, you could say, hey, do you mind looking at this or playing around with this? It's an easy, fun thing. You're not lecturing the person.
Absolutely. And you mentioned grandparents, and I'm one of them. It's very important that that information is shared, because grandparents and even great-grandparents today are very involved with raising their grandchildren.
Yes.
Yet the information that they are considering as important has changed. And we no longer do all the things we were advised to do years ago. I raised my babies on their bellies. That's what we were told. We know that back to sleep now is actually the safer way to go.
And I think an important point is, because a lot of people might hear you say, oh, SIDS, well, that doesn't affect me because I just gave birth to a really big, healthy baby. So before the show started, I shared with you when my son was born 13 years ago, 9 pounds, looked really healthy, had some respiratory issues, has asthma now. And we have tragically a 6-month-old niece in the family, big, healthy baby girl who died at 6 months of SIDS. So sometimes looks can be deceiving, and I just believe this is something everybody should look at. Just check it out.
Absolutely. Even though the rates have fallen by half since Back to Sleep and Safe to Sleep recommendations have been developed, it still remains a leading cause of infant mortality.
With thousands of babies dying of this.
Absolutely. The numbers nationally, all across the United States, went from about 5,000 to about 1,500 since the safe infant sleep practices were introduced. And New Jersey has among the lowest rates because we've really been going gangbusters for years on safe sleep education. But you mentioned a point that I think is very, very important. Oh, I did everything wrong and my baby's fine. I didn't listen. Well, we also didn't have seatbelts when we were growing up. We rode bikes without helmets. But we know better now. And who wants to play Russian roulette with a baby? So yes, you can do everything wrong in public health and still come out okay, but you have a much better chance if you follow whatever the safety regulations are, car seats or for general things, or wearing a helmet and so forth. We all know people who eat nothing but bacon 3 times a day, smoke like chimneys, never exercise. They're going to be 100 years old.
Yes.
But those are called exceptions.
Yes.
They're not the rule. And yes, SIDS remains a low-frequency event, but we have to remember it's still a leading cause, even with the drop. If there's something that we can do about it, and it's a simple thing, like following the safe sleep guidelines, why not do it? It makes such a difference.
Well, thank you so much for your advocacy. Grandmother of 7, congratulations on that too. The Baby Be Well app.
Yes.
So everybody's got to check it out. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Barbara Ostfeld, Program Director of the SIDS Center of New Jersey and Professor at Rutgers Robert Wood Johnson Medical School. Jersey Matters continues right after this.
When we come back, you'll meet one of CNN's heroes of 2019, and she's from New Jersey. Her story when Jersey Matters continues.